So we left off at the 4 different qualities that are needed to do the Ratzon Hashem, right? To acquire this thing called Zrizus, you need to have strength of a lion, right? Boldness of an eagle, swiftness of a gazelle, and lightness of an eagle. So 4 different qualities.
Leopard.
What did I say? I said eagle?
Eagle, yes, you did.
What happened? Boldness, what did I say? Boldness of an eagle, I said. I meant boldness of a leopard. Yeah.
Bald eagle, Nick.
Boldness of a leopard, yeah. Okay, anyways, right, so you need all these four qualities. Even though I think at the end he's really focusing on the Gibor part, right? He's going to focus on the Gibor part. And again, also, even though we see that, how should I say, the untraditional approach of Judaism to the word Gvura, strength, right, is withholding, right? It's holding yourself, is restraint, right? Ezu Gibor, Hakovish as Yitzray. Over here, the Ramchal is going to go, I think, with the more traditional translation of the word Gibor, which means, actual strength, right? You have to be strong in order to get yourself out of bed. You have to be strong. You have to exercise power. So, or maybe it's also overpower. So it's also kind of, it's not restraint, but generally we think of restraint as I want A, I hold myself back from A. That's restraint. But I guess the common denominator is that strength at the end means overpowering something, right? So there's one type of overpowering. I want A. I hold myself back from A. I overpower myself. There's another type of overpowering. I don't want A. I just want to, lie in bed and do nothing. So then I overpower that urge. So again, that's also Gvura. So Gvura, at the end of the day, the translation of the word Gvura is overpowering, right? And same thing when 2 people are fighting. One overpowers the other, so he's the stronger one, right? The key is the overcoming the challenge. The strength is the quality of overcoming a challenge, right? And we also said that the basic quality of Zrizus is to jump at the opportunity, step 1, and 2 is complete the mission, right? Jump at the opportunity and complete the mission. Fine, so let's see. So, but the essence of it, but the main challenge, the primary challenge to Zrizus is going to be laziness. So let's see. V'hinei Shlomo shana me'oid be'azharosoi. Shlomo Melech, shana me'oid means he repeated numerous times his warning al zeh with regards to this, meaning what's this? The need to overpower. Esuroya ha'atzola by showing Esuroya ha'atzola, the evil or the terribleness of the atzola, of laziness, v'hefsed ha'godol, and the great loss hanimshach mimenu, that results from it. Right? V'omar, and he said, me'at sheinois, me'at tumois, a little sleep, a little slumber, me'at chibuk yadayim, a little bit of resting of the hands, lishkav, to sleep, uvo k'mahalech reishecha, and your poverty will come like a traveler, is what they translate. Meaning, mahalech means a walker. Reishecha means poverty. And your loss, ki ish mogain, and your loss will come like an armed, like a mogain means like a defended man, but an armed man over here, right? So a little bit of laziness is what we're saying from Shlomo Melech. A little bit of laziness results in great damage, right?
It comes fast.
Which comes, I'm not sure if it says fast. It's certain, but I don't know if it says necessarily fast. Because the reason why I'm saying it's not certain, because I think Ramchal is going to stress that it actually is gradually. That's why you don't notice it. If it would be fast, then it would be obvious, right? If the result of laziness would be instantaneous, then it would be easier to fight laziness. It's because the result is not often instantaneous, then it seems like, okay, nothing happened. It's no big deal. And then all of a sudden, it comes in.
The English Taish here puts in parentheses, he implies that it comes fast. And your poverty will arrive as suddenly as the one who works hurriedly, and your deficiency as fast as the man who shields his king when at war. So he pushes for
right.
imminent arrival of the Tsars.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's keep in that. Let's keep it. I mean, I'm assuming they know that they're not idiots either, so they probably come from someplace. So we'll have to see. We'll have to keep that in mind. Okay, all right. So let's continue. Kihine ha'otzel, because the lazy one, even though he doesn't do evil, b'kumase actively, meaning not like in the previous chapter of somebody who was not zohir, somebody who was not careful, right? He would actually do something wrong without realizing it, even with realizing but not focusing on it, right? So he actually does something wrong. This lazy person is just sitting in bed. He's not doing anything too terrible, right? He might be lazy to go to davening. He might be... Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, so right, so he's not doing any active evil destruction. However, he brings evil upon himself passively, with his passivity. Right, with Omar, and he continues. The Shlomo Melech continues. Gam misrape b'malachto, somebody who is misrape. How do you say misrape? He's weakens, or he is lax in his malacha. He's like a brother to the destroyer. Right? So in other words, passive laziness seems passive and non-destructive, but really in reality, he's a brother to the destruction. Right? Again, we see, by the way. Again, that's not. I'm not sure if it's comparable. We'll have to wait and see. But right, this week's parsha, we have something called Rifidim, right? And Rifidim is the place where Amalek attacked Klal Yisrael. And right, Rifidim is a combination word, Rifyon Yadayim, which means the laziness of hands, right? Or weakness of hands, right? But there's different kinds of weakness of hands, right? There's a weakness of hands when a person, like the depressed people are usually, they just can't bring themselves to do anything, right? Because they're depressed. And then there is just plain good old plain laziness, right? And even laziness is divided into subcategories. Sometimes a person is not lazy by nature, but he's not motivated by this particular topic. Other people are, they might be just have a stronger, what's the word? A stronger resistance. What's the opposite? Objects at rest, right? There's the stronger resistance to motion. Okay, so so gamisrape b'malachtoi. So it's interesting. So the Parshas B'Shalach seems more like the Rifyon Yadayim, the weakness of hands of Parshas B'Shalach does not seem like laziness. It was more like like they were confused, right? There was it was more like an act of depression, I think. Any case, so gam misharba malachta hula bal mashchis ki afapi, because even though she nena mashchis or oises rabbi yodai, because even though he's not a mashchis, he's not a destroyer, somebody who does evil with his hands, lo yisachshav shu rachik menu. It's not considered that he's very far from it. Ela ochiv hu ben giloi hu, he's his relative and his brother, or his brother and his relative. Okay, fine. So we understand that, I think, right? Does that require an explanation? Does that require an explanation?
No, laziness is
right. So, anyways, I mean, I think again, maybe I'm wrong, but why is there laziness? Why should there be laziness? Right? Again, and this goes back maybe to the question that we raised, remember, for us last time, 2 times ago, is laziness, is that we said, is this teva, right? Remember he said Yetzer Hara, and he says it teva. Is it teva? Is it nature, or is it Yetzer Hara? Which one is it? Which one is it? So, right? So again, so we see that again outside of human environment, we see that laziness is built into nature, right? Correct? Because not just human objects, I'm saying physical objects, they are always looking for the lowest energy state, right? Nothing just spontaneously acts. Everything looks to unact, right? Furthermore, right, order in general, order is more energy than disorder, right? So the fact that the world exists, which is a world of order, is a contradiction because, what's forcing it to create order, because there should be no energy. Why is it? Where did this energy come from to create order when it should be built into the nature of the world to just have no order, right? So there has to be a stimulus that forces movement and forces action and forces any intellectual idea means order, right? You're connecting ideas, that means a state of order. So on the other hand, the world really shouldn't have been created. There's no reason for the world to exist. Even if you put God into the picture, forget, obviously, if you don't have God in the picture, then there's no reason for the world to exist. But even if you put God into the picture, it was still a complete and total, act of volition on God's part to create the world, which is constantly is seeking to return to its fundamental, non-existence, right? So we have these two forces, I think, built into the world, these two full forces that are constantly fighting each other. The force that says, God says, Yehi, it should be, right? And the force that says, no, it shouldn't be. Let's go back to where it came from, right? So those two forces are built into the very fabric of creation, right? So our, our laziness, right, is part of our desire to return to our original state, which is a non-state, right? So.
And then it's up to ourselves how we want to get there.
Right. But I'm just saying, but there's a certain paradox there, because on one hand, the return to non-state is also, in a sense, a return to godliness, because before the world was created, there was only God, so to speak, right? And then to create, to become, to turn ourselves into a state is also godliness, because it's God's will to create this, right? It's God's will that it should be, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but it's a paradox of sorts. In my mind, it's a paradox that it's a non-creative. This need to be creative and non-creative. They're both godly and they're both ungodly at the same kind of weird. I don't know, weird combo. Okay, I don't know. That's my food for thought. Okay. Anyways. So V'omar Odin, he continues to explain Levier to explain Ras ha'otzel be'er tzuri. Then he gives a more visible depiction of a lazy person. Masha Yikra, what will happen v'voled and will result le'einenu yom yom, before our very eyes, day by day. Right? I'll stay. What is Shlomo? This is right. He writes there. I'll stay ish otzel avarti, upon the field of a lazy man I passed by. Okay, it's interesting that he calls him ish otzel. We're gonna get again, because the word ish in Hebrew language does not just mean a male person, right? it means actually, in a certain sense, it means the opposite of laziness. It actually means a certain, a man, right? An active participant, right? So it's interesting that it says, I'll stay ish otzel of art. It's almost a contradiction in terms. Val kerem odom, and the vineyard of a man, over here it just says plain, that's a man, chasar lev, who is lack of heart, right? So which is also the contradiction of Adam and Chasar Lev, and somebody, right? Adam by definition is an intelligent being, and yet over here this Adam is Chasar Lev. V'hinei olo kuloi kim shoinim, right? And his whole field is full of thistles. Yes, thistles. Kim shoinim.
Thistles. Yeah.
Thorns. Oh yeah. Kisu ponov charulim. And the face is the surface is covered with nettles. Okay, so I don't know what the difference between thistles and nettles or thorns, but basically different things are covering his field. Okay, and I saw myself oshis libi when I set my heart to Reisi, and I saw lakachti musar, and so I took musar. Ma'at sheinois, that a little bit of sleep, and etc. Uvomis halach reshecha, and then not quickly, but again, your poverty will come. Okay. V'hinei milvad pshuto yasher hu amitoi kimashmoi. Now, besides the simple description of a lazy person, which Shlomo Melech describes, shuhu mashikori al zdeha etzel mamash, what you see from basically the economic poor decision making on behalf of a lazy person, right? The Chachamim applied this as a mashal to intellectual pursuit, right? Not just the physical field, but also his intellectual field. What does it mean when it says that his whole field is covered with thorns? He seeks to find an explanation of a parsha, but he cannot find it. Right? Kosuponov, whatever, nettles. When the surface is covered with nettles, since he did not toil in them, he further then makes a wrong decision, a wrong psak. Right, on something that's toher, he decreased tameh, and something that's tameh, he decreased toher. And as a result, he breaks through the fence of Talmidei Chachamim. In other words, he creates a disorder, right? And what is the punishment of that? This is from Kehelis. The pasuk says that somebody who breaks a fence, he will be bitten by a snake, right? In other words, he what's the word? He made a hole. Made a hole in the fence. So therefore, he himself is going to be punished by the fact that he's going to be bitten by the snake that's going to climb through that fence. That's the pasuk in Kehelis. But we're using it more generally that Poiritz Geder, again, somebody who breaks through the fence that Chachamim set up, he's going to get punished by that. Right? That's the punishment. So since this person, through his laziness, makes the wrong psak, right? So as a result, he's going to get punishment. And that's the point. Fine, I'll just finish the paragraph and then we'll discuss. This is what I was referring to. The evilness of the lazy person does not come in one shot. Rather little by little. Before he knows, without him knowing and understanding it. That he's being pulled from one evil to the next. Until he's completely drowning in total evil, in complete ruin. Right? So two things. So this is so there's this physical laziness and then there's intellectual laziness. Right? So physical laziness is you're in bed, comes shacharis, you don't want to get up and out of bed. That's physical laziness. There is an intellectual laziness where I'm learning some topic, I'm learning some Gemara or whatever it is, and my mind is refusing to really push with the 100% that it has, right? Generally speaking, we are drawn to laziness. We want information to just flow into us without us really, calculating it, right? Which is why, again, I don't know if everybody learned chess, right? But chess forces you to think ahead, and you got to keep cheshboning out every possibility, right? And somehow, so it's right. And for a regular person, if they try to play chess, they just don't have the, I don't know what you call it. It's patience. It's more than just patience. They're just not willing to put in the effort necessary to actually keep cheshboning, keep thinking it through, right? So it's the same thing with Gemara. We want everything to be easy. We don't want it to be, right? And even when we intellectually understand that everything requires effort, and we're intellectually willing to put in the effort, we have no ability, and this is what I think makes intellectual laziness much more difficult to overcome than physical laziness. Physical laziness is easy to overcome. You can't get up at certain times, so you get a bigger alarm clock. You do, what it says here, you throw off your blanket, stories from Gedolim. There's very specific, the rubric to know whether you fought off your laziness or you didn't fight off your laziness, right? Intellectual laziness is much more difficult to overcome because when your mind, you think your mind is working at 80%, at 100%, but it's really working at 75%, and there's no way to tell because you're judging, because before it was working at 25%, you pushed your mind to work at 50%, at 75%. You think you've reached, you're right, you've accomplished, but in reality, your mind is still not, what's the word? Most of the RAM is still in hibernation, right? So that's what makes it much more difficult. Which is why I think that the Chachamim are darshaning it for So Shlomo Melech is talking about what we can see with our very eyes, right? Somebody's poor management results in see the results, right? And the Chachamim are saying what you don't see as much. What you don't see is the intellectual part of it, where a person's intellectual laziness forces him to create either not being able to find a source for what he's looking for, or even worse, is coming up with wrong conclusions based on his poor whatever it is, poor intellectual management, right? And that's number one. So that's point number one. Point number one is to understand that intellectual laziness is much worse than physical laziness. Point number two is that it's like this what he said before. That that the person who is lazy, right? He doesn't necessarily see that. That my inaction of today created the storm from 2 months from now, right? The storm came because whatever, right? For whatever reason, the storm, there's always an immediate cause for the storm, but he doesn't see that the immediate cause could have been avoided had there been the original cause, right? A person on the side, right, this is saying, I passed by a field of a lazy person. The person on the side can see the entire sequence of events. But the person who is inside, right, he doesn't, right? He only sees, right? So, okay, all right, so that's, and I think that's pretty straightforward. Okay, moving on. Second. In the beginning, in the beginning, his only, machzir was only losing the additional effort, which was proper to him. Again, this is going back to intellectual laziness. And as a result, since he's a little bit lazy, he's not putting in his entire effort worth. So therefore, he doesn't learn Torah in its as he could have. Now, because of the result of the little bit minimization in learning, when he continues to learn, he's building up a lack of not understanding. Now, if not for the fact, if this would be the end of it, this would already be terrible. But he continues to what's the word, to gather problems, because he wants to get to an answer. I mean, this is a tremendous problem. I mean, I don't know, right? Meaning, you come to a question. You came to a Mishnah. You learned a Mishnah. You have a great question, right? You have a great question. You're going to want to come up with an answer, right? You don't realize it. So now you come up with an answer, and you think, what a great answer! I'm such a genius. I came up with a good answer. What you don't realize that had you been learning for the past 10 sessions at 100%, you would have had, 25% more knowledge by the time you get here. And having had that 25% more knowledge, you would have come up with a real answer, right? But because you didn't have those 25% more knowledge, and so now you're only functioning with 75% of resources, and you came up with an answer using those 75% of resources, you think you just solved a great puzzle, but you only utilizing 75% of the resources that you could have had, and your answer is completely off, right? So in a way, right? That's what he's saying. He's saying, had you only, had the only problem been that you don't have full knowledge, that would have been a problem. But the real problem begins when without that full knowledge, you come up with, you solve the puzzles accordingly, and as a result, come up with the wrong answers. Since he wants to answer the parsha of a parak or the parakahu, therefore he will reveal faces that are not in accordance with halacha, meaning he will give wrong pshatim. And in essence he will destroy truth. And will turn it upside down. And as a result he will transgress over the decrees, and will break through the fences, and in the end he will be eradicated, like the appropriate judgment for somebody who destroys a fence, meaning, in other words, creates disorder, right? The whole point of Torah is to restore the world to its order, to give it shape and logic, right? Omer Shlomo. Okay, let's continue. Omer Shlomo says, right? So I saw this, I grasped this, and I put my heart in it. He's saying that I contemplated this matter. And I saw the great evil of all of this, which is like poison, which travels through the body little by little. But the true effect is only visible at death. And so he says, a little bit of sleep. And the result will come like a traveler and like an armed person. Right? Okay, so that's the end of that part. Now we see ourselves with our eyes. Many times. That a person knows his obligation, right? So this is going back now again. So he just finished off Shlomo Melech's description of laziness, and now he's going back to the point, the main drive of Zrizus, right? Because we see that a person understands what he's supposed to do. That's his chayvos, so his obligation. He understands what he's supposed to do. When Yisames etzloi, and it's clear to him mashiroi loy lehatzolas nafsho, what he needs to do to save his nefesh, umashichoyvo alav mitzad boy, right? And what is obligated upon him from his creator. V'afal pikein, and still in all yanichehu, he will leave it, right? He will leave it. Not from the lack of appreciation of that obligation, and not for any other reason, but because the heaviness of laziness overpowers him. Right? So he sees it, he knows it, he understands it, but he still can't bring himself to actually do it. And it's like it says, Oichel kima, let me eat a little bit, or Ishon kima, let me first sleep a little bit, or Kosha olai lotzeisi, mebesi, it's a little hard for me to go out of the house. Pashati is kutonti echachal bashana, this borrows a pasuk from Shir Hashirim, right? I already spread my blanket, how can I wear it? Right? Chama azaboilam, it's too hot today, there's a great heat wave, or hakara rabba, or it's too cold, or hagshomim, or it's too rainy, v'chol shar ha'am salois, and all other different excuses, v'hatoyanois asher piha eitzolim molei mehem, which the mouths of lazy people are full of them. Okay? Again, so the point of, again, going back to what Shlomo Melech was saying, is that I passed by this field and I internalized it, right? Meaning there's a fight between what we understand intellectually, right, and what our body wants us to experience, right? So what's our way out of it, right? I mean, sometimes we could use brute force, right? We can use brute force to actually force, again, but it takes a lot of willpower. It takes a lot of willpower to fight laziness with brute force. And some people are good at doing that. Most people I don't think are good at doing that. Right? Most people, how can a person overcome laziness? I think the only alternative to overcoming laziness is motivation. Right?
So
right? Like a child. Let's say you have some kids, don't want to go to school. I don't know. Right? It's very hard to tell this kid, but you must, but you have to force yourself. Don't you understand? It's very difficult to exercise brute force in and day out, right? Special people, okay, that have strong willpower, they can exercise brute force and overpower them. What's the other alternative? The other alternative is you internalize certain ideas, right? Until those ideas sink into your kind of they're not just intellectual ideas that you say, I know it's the right thing to do, but you don't feel it, right? Until it actually sinks into your kishka, so to speak. And then you could have an actual battle where the ideas internalized can overcome your laziness. Not so much that it becomes like a battle, it's just you realize it's just not worth it, right? So therefore, so the same thing with the lazy, like that field of Shlomo Melech. I saw it, and I put my heart on it, right? And I tried to use that as opportunity, that visualization of seeing that lesson in my face. I tried to use that lesson as to, internalize it, right? So when you internalize it, then you have a chance in overcoming the laziness. But otherwise, I mean, that's the crazy thing. I mean, we are just full of excuses, right? And the excuses are, at the moment, the excuses seem very reasonable. Meaning, right. Again, I'm dealing with kids all the time, so obviously, I see it. I have this kid. I mean, it's not a regular case, but he's a little depressed, right? So he's had a hard time coming to school every day, in, out. Brilliant kid, right? So fine, but he's never completed anything. Like, he just can't sustain an effort for a long time. Just can't do it. He's like a burst of energy, and then but never sustains an effort in anything, right? And last time I spoke to him, he says, okay, I thought about it, and I decided I'm going to go get a GED. So, because this way I can graduate, go to college, everything's going to be good, right? And I told him already. This is like 10th conversation. I told him, listen, you have a different problem. The thing that's preventing you from getting the diploma is the very thing that will also prevent you from getting a GED. It's not like, no, you'll see. I'm not only going to get a GED, we're going to ace the GED. I'm going to do it, get a perfect score, right? And in his mind, finally, I found my motivator. You'll see, I'm going to accomplish, right? But what he doesn't see is that his chief motivating strategy right now is avoidance of the thing that he doesn't want to do. So he thinks that he's going to replace B. He really wants B, but in reality what he wants is to avoid A. When B is going to fail, he's going to find C to avoid B, or he's going to come back to A, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, he's motivated not by the thing itself, but the avoidance of the other thing. Right? But in the moment, again, we all have those. Again, I think also men, I think I'm not women, but men are very generally status quo, again, speaking for myself, but status quo creatures. We like our comfort zones. And so when we need to do something, we can easily find reasons why we shouldn't do it. Okay, anyway, so B'chol Sharam, Aslois, and all these excuses, that the lazy people's mouths are full of them. The Torah remains untouched. And the service is neglected. And the person leaves his creator. And this was also Shlomo Melech says, with laziness, the roof leaks, or the roof Yimach is lowered, with the lowering of the hands, Yidlef Habayis, the house leaks. Right? So it's another marshal. Okay. So again, over here we see that lack of action produces destruction. What else did I want to add? One other thing that I wanted to add was that so counterpoint to laziness, right? So before, intellectual laziness. I mean, right? So he tells you, right, that if you're going to learn not 100%, but at 75%, then you're going to come up to the point where you're ready to make your own conclusions, your own solutions, right? But being that you only pushed yourself at 75%, you're more likely to come to the wrong conclusion and then make a wrong solution, right? And then that's how, right? But the truth is, the truth is, even when a person learns 100%, right? I mean, my 100% is not Ramchal's. My 100% is not even Ramchal's 10%, right? So even if when I learn 100%, I'm also going to come up with negative conclusions because I'm also nowhere near Ramchal, so maybe I shouldn't even try, right? I mean, what's the point, right? So what are you scaring? You're scaring me, Ramchal, that if I only learn at 75% capacity, I'm going to make the wrong decisions. Yeah, but 100% capacity, I'm also going to make a wrong decision, right? So again, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm assuming the answer is that 100% capacity, you are reaching perfection. Meaning, in as much perfection as you could reach, you're getting it, and that's divine. That's the divine part of it. When a person approaches the most that he can approach, he's approaching the divine, and at that point, he has therefore also divine assistance in seeing the big picture, right? So all of Torah is a matana. Is at the end of the day is a gift. But the gift comes only after 100% effort. The gift does not come at 75% effort, at 50% effort. It comes only after 100% effort. Okay. All right, let's continue. V'ulam im tishol es pi ha'otzel. Now, if you ask a lazy person, yavai lecha b'mamorim rabim, b'mamorei chachamim, v'mikrois min aksuvim. If you, right, he's going to have good responses to you, right? He will have many statements from sages and many psukim from the writings, v'atainos min haseichel, and logical conclusions, asher kulam yoyreloi, which all will prove to him, right? Will prove to him l'fidaito yameshubesh, from his mistaken mental state, l'hokil to take it easy, and to leave himself in the rest that his laziness brings them. But he doesn't see that these logical conclusions, quote unquote, and those reasons that he produces, from his thinks is being objective. Again, those reasonings, those arguments are only stemming from his laziness. Because he allows it to strengthen in him. And therefore his bias, right? His knowledge and his mind is biased to these faulty arguments. And therefore he's not able to listen to the voice of Chachamim and those that have a proper knowledge. Again, this is what Shlomo Melech cries when he says Chacham Otzel Be'enov Meshiva Meshiveitam, that the person who is lazy, right, he's Chacham Be'enov, he's wise in his eyes, more than 7 those that answer with reason, right? So he thinks that he's wiser than 7 sages, basically. Because his laziness also prevents him from even opening up his ear to those that try to correct him. They are all mistaken. They're all losers. And he's the only one who is wise. Now behold, now this is a great principle when it comes to precious. Okay, so for right now he just brings in precious. Precious is way down the road. Precious means separating from Olam Hazeh to a higher degree than average, right? So he says this is a general principle that is easily recognizable against when it comes to Malachas Precious. And what is it? What is this principle? Shekol kula tzricha bedika. That any leniency, right? Kula is leniency. Tzricha bedika needs checking, right? Meaning what? Now it's possible that a kula leniency may be straight and proper. However, it's very likely that it's from the counsel of the Yetzer Hara and from its trickery. Right? Meaning anytime, what he's saying is that anytime a person is trying to find a kula, he should ask himself, what is the source for this desire to find a kula? Right? So this is not just laziness. I mean, there are different kinds of kulas, but right, we see all the time, right, a person says, oh, I'm talking, let's say, non-religious person says, of course it's a good idea to have a TV in the house. You know what I mean? There's so many good programs on the television. You can see Discovery Channel. So what you see, you learn so much. Or just yesterday, I learned something, on my phone, and it was very, very helpful, right? So they're very logical conclusions, right? So, but the conclusions, when the logic is being used to allow something, right, as opposed to prohibit something, is what he's saying, then a person should double check himself to find out maybe his drive for the kula is tainted with his, with the conclusion that he's trying to reach, not necessarily that the conclusion is being reached through the logic, but rather the logic is coming to support the conclusion that he wanted to reach in the first place. Therefore, a person has to check himself with many, with many self-reflections and analysis. And only after all these examinations, then he could admit this kula, right? Again, nowadays, again, I don't know, probably I'm going to say that Ramchal would agree with me, that nowadays we have every chumrah also needs a bedik, right? Right? Not just every kula, every chumrah also, because we have a tendency in certain communities that a chumrah is something desirable, right? So okay, but nonetheless, again, it doesn't make what he's saying not true. That's the truth. Is we see a lot of people, when they are interested or disinterested in something, they will find good justification for it and good rationalization for it, because they already want a certain conclusion to occur. So once they want a certain conclusion to occur, they'll find very logical, very sensible arguments for it. Right? Again, this is really part of the very, the difficulty of intellectual honesty is that in general, it's easy to catch a guy who's intellectually dishonest. And he knows that he's intellectually dishonest. It's much harder to, I'm not sure actually if what I said is true, but the bottom line is that, right, we understand there's a difference between intentional intellectual dishonesty and, like most of us, is unintentional intellectual dishonesty. Right? Okay, let's just, what time is it? Very late. Okay, but let's just read up the last paragraph left. Klalei shel davar. Again, the general principle is chizuk godol tzarich adam leyischazek uleizgaber bezrizus. A person needs a lot of strength to strengthen himself in zrizus. Lasais a mitzvos behashlicha me'alov koived ha'atzola. To throw away from him the heaviness of laziness, and me'akeves al yodeh, which prevents him. V'tira shamalochim. Now look, that the malachim, the angels, they are praised by having this midah. Shenemar b'hem giboirei koyach. They are strong of power. Oisei dvorei. They do His word. They act on His word. L'shmoya b'kol dvorei. To listen to even the voice of His word. Right. In other words, the malachim are they don't have this problem. They're instantaneously fulfill God's will. That the chayes, which is another type of angel, they run and they return, like the flash of lightning. However, a person is a person and not a malach. Therefore, it's impossible for him to reach the strength of a malach. However, certainly anything that's within his power to come closer to being a malach, it is good that he should come close. He praised himself by saying, I rushed and I did not delay to keep your commandments. Right? So again, we'll have to pick up next time. But basically, right, certainly it sounds like this, that Zrizus has the only one, one challenge, laziness. Right, the built-in laziness, and that's part of the nature of the human being, that heaviness of Gashmias, that's really what Zrizus is fighting. But one thing that we still have to just speak out is that Zehirus, again, here said is in the negative commandments. Right, we understand Zehirus creates, when a person's not careful, he breaks Shabbos. When a person's not careful, he can insult another human being. Zrizus was supposed to be in the positive commandments, right? I'm too lazy to daven, I'm too lazy to put on tefillin, I'm too lazy to whatever. But throughout this whole time, we saw the message was that laziness creates damage, it creates problems. So we just have to just balance this all out. Now that we see the Zrizus and Zehirus together, just to paint the fuller picture, I guess we'll save it for next time.